Hi, everybody. This is Julie Bombasino, co-founder and CEO of Real Food Blends, going live to take some of your questions. And today we're going to be talking first, though, about kind of all the different ways that you can feed a blended diet, including Real Food Blends. We get a lot of questions about which pump is the best, how to bolus feed, or what is bolus feeding, which extension sets to use, sometimes which other things to use. There's a lot of different accoutrements that you can use with tube feeding. So I'm going to go through some of those things, and then I'll take some questions towards the end. I'll be here about the next 20-30 minutes. Feel free to chat in any questions that you might have, but let's get started. Probably the most basic question that we get a lot of times is about which extension sets to use. So this is considered, let me make sure you can see that well. This is considered the bolus feeding extension set. So there's not a right angle there. So you just connect that straight into the tube, lock it, and you can push the food in or the meds or whatever that is, you know, from the syringe directly in there, or you can even, a lot of people obviously would put the pump bag connector right into this one. So this is the bolus feeding one. You can see it's a little bit bigger than the one with the med port, which I'll show you next. A little bit bigger even, it looks like, on this particular tip. So what you can't do with this, kind of tuck it around or place it, you know, kind of in and out of as easily, I feel like, as you can with the Y port one with the meds. They kind of, for AJ, we tend to like tuck that around his pants sometimes and kind of leave it on for a little bit. So this is the bolus feeding one. Definitely a lot easier for pushing a thicker blend. And this is the Y port one. So you can see, and these are both Mickey ones. I'm sure some of you probably have the purple ended ones. Those are the mini connectors, but similar concept here. So this is the Y port. You can see there that there's a med port there. So that's where you can give your medicine syringe, or your syringes for just the medicines in through there. And then this would be more of the bolus connector at this, oops, let me close the med port. At this angle would be more for bolus feeding. So the clamp is on there as well. You know, I find this gives a little more resistance than the bolus feeding one, which I guess that's why they're called that. But we have always kind of used this one with AJ, always with a thumb over the med port. We've had some, you know, spraybacks happen, unfortunately, if you're not careful to hold down the med port. We just find this one's easier for us. But like I said, a lot of folks use this one, the bolus feeding one, for the thicker Real Food Blends, especially when using the syringes, which brings me now to syringes. We get this one all of the time, is which syringes to use and what are these squirrel syringes and how do I get the O-ring syringes? So let me show you the big differences. So this one here with the blue tip is kind of this a standard one that you get from your DME. You can see here, it's got this whole rubber stopper type of thing here. And you know, right now, because it's brand new, it slides pretty easily. What tends to happen with these particular types of syringes that have this kind of rubber stopper is that after you use them a couple of times or wash them, this tends to get a little misshapen, and then this action gets a lot harder. You need to push a lot harder. And so that's the kind of regular, you know, rubber tip syringes. And so I'll show you the difference here. These are the Miracle syringes. You can see it says Miracle here, the O-ring syringes. These are the infamous squirrel store syringes. We have had, I think we've got 6 of them left still from the original ones that we ordered for AJ 7.5 years ago. So they do work for quite some time. So you can see here the big difference. So that's the O-ring right there. There's not a big rubber stopper going over that would, you know, either warp or, you know, just get, I don't know, food or water underneath it, causing it to kind of get stuck when you try to put it back in there. And so that's the O-ring versus the rubber tipped ones, or the rubber stopper ones, I guess I should say. So we get this question a ton about if this is covered from your DME or if you can get these through your DME. Oftentimes no. I know there is a company called Neomed that makes O-ring syringes. I think they're only for the ENFit connectors now, if any of you are using ENFit. I know that they are somewhat more expensive though, so they are tough to get through your DME. So if you have an ENFit connector, you might want to look into purchasing some of those Neomed connectors. But these are actually available now on Amazon. I'll put a link in here at the end of this directly to those. It's worthwhile to pay for maybe, 10 of them out of pocket. They're really not that expensive, only a couple bucks. But you can wash and reuse them often. We tend to wash these in the dishwasher. So we just take them apart, give them a little rinse, put this on the top rack, put this in with the silverware, and we wash them. And the other tip with all of this is after you use them, we put a little bit of olive oil in here once they're clean and just reconnect them, and they slide really, really easily. So I don't know if that's technical clinical safety to wash them like that, but we wash them like we wash our forks and our knives. It's all going into the same thing. And so as long as we're using good kitchen handling practices with our forks and knives, we think that's pretty safe. And AJ's been tube fed now for 8 years without issue when it comes to that. So I think that makes sense. So wash them like your forks and knives versus, again, these are the ones that you get from your DME with the rubber tip stopper that can be a little bit more difficult. So you might be able to luck out and get something like this from your DME. If not, like I said, just buy them out of pocket. You can keep reusing them. So, okay, moving on. Our next little piece of equipment here. This is the Infinity Pump Bag. This is the kind of be-all, end-all of tube feeding blenderized diets, including real food blends with a pump. Huge, huge, huge reason. Let me try and close this up so I can show you from the beginning. So the reason that this particular pump has become what's known as the blended diet friendly pump is because if you can see there, I'll try to zoom in a little bit there, there is a little teardrop right there. If you find that teardrop and you pull this back, this is, again, probably only for home use, but this is what we make do when we're in home. You can see that little teeny tiny little pinch point right there. You couldn't even get like a pin through there. Like basically just a drop of pure liquid is going to go through that and nothing else. And so the hack in the blenderized diet community is just to snip that off with a pair of scissors, preferably clean scissors, and then reattach it. And then really what you're looking at is the only pinch point in this entire process, once that is cut off, is how big the tube hole is in the human body. This has kind of always been my saying about the pump bags in general, is that the pinch point to deliver any sort of food really shouldn't be in this. It should be what the hole in the human body is. And so if it fits through the hole in the human body, then this should actually work. So that's the hack with the Infinity Pump. I do know there's quite a few people out there. There's some startups. I know that the pump manufacturers are actively looking at blenderized diet-friendly options when it comes to pump bags. There's a lot of issues around that because the viscosity can vary so much, including just because of room temperature. So I know that there's more innovation coming down the pipeline, but for now, the Infinity Pump Bag with that alteration is really the only way to do it. We have a lot more tips on our website about using the pumps though with our meals. You're gonna, if you're using the pump and using real food blends, you'll definitely notice you have to kind of play around with the settings. I like to see the meals fed as quickly as possible because we like to put people on a normal mealtime schedule, breakfast, lunch, dinner, maybe some snacks in there, not 3, 4, or 5 hours of continuously being fed. So the faster the better, and also with our food especially, the faster you keep the food moving, the better and less likely you're going to have problems with the pump kind of malfunctioning because there's some sediment or because gravity takes over and the heavier food kind of flows to the bottom. There's not necessarily particulate matter in our meals that's going to clog the pump, but the heavier food will settle in there at times if it's sitting for too long. So that's the hack on the Infinity Pump bags. I think a lot of you that have Joey or kangaroo pumps right now. There's a back order from what we understand with the pump bags, so it might be a good opportunity to change pumps anyway, and then have the option of using a thicker food. And coincidentally, so Sharon Weston, who's a great dietitian out of Boston Children's Hospital and one of the dietitians involved with the research that came out a few months back from Boston Children's, they have a big section in that paper, and then just kind of in their common beliefs there, that the thickness of blenderized diets, is, including real food blends, is kind of part of the secret sauce, so to speak, as to why they tend to be better tolerated and help with reflux and things like that. So that thickness is intentional for our meals. You know, and we do like to encourage the bolus feeding whenever possible, especially if you're dealing with reflux or aspiration risks, and especially if you can get on that normal mealtime schedule, that's really important. So, okay, moving on. Feel free, I think a few more people have joined us. If there's any questions, just chat them in. I will get to them shortly. So next, I'm going to talk about, oops, where's the other piece? The Boley Bag. So we do get the question quite a bit. You know, a lot of people like to add other things to our meals, which is great. If they want to add more water, if they want to add milk, kefir, pourable kefir is one of my particular favorites, or even just mixing up their supplements or whatever that is, if they don't want to bolus feed with the syringes. These Boley bags are a great way to kind of push in, you know, a little bit, maybe drip a little bit with our meals. And so you can pour the food into the bag directly in here and fills up, I think it fills up, 12.5 ounces. So that's a pretty decent sized meal. You connect this, this is only an NFIT connector. I think they do have the adapter though for the regular, the legacy versions. And then you can just, you know, pour slash let it drop slash kind of push in the food that way. So you're not, you know, feeding with the syringes or dealing with the mechanics of a pump. So great option for those who, you know, add other things to our meals, thin them out a little bit, or just don't want to deal with the syringes. So nice to see more innovations coming in kind of these devices to make it easier for people to, you know, feed blended diets. So that's one. And then the last one here, when it comes to the gear, this is a squeezy bottle, and I didn't even get a matching top this time. So again, for those that like the idea of the Boley bag or want to mix our food in with other things, again, milks and kefirs and whatever that is. So this is really easy, and these were not developed for tube feeding, but we've kind of taken over, I feel like. They're more developed for just kids eating orally. So the nice part is you can fill this up with whatever you're feeding that particular day, stick the syringe in right here, and then you can just fill that up that way. So no drips, no messes. Funny thing is, we've got a nurse that's been working with us and AJ for a while, and we've been using these because he's on a modified Atkins diet now for his seizure control. So we mix some oils and additional fats in the meals. And it took her probably 3 or 4 weeks. And then finally I showed her, I'm like, wait, go like this. It's a lot cleaner. And she's like, oh, because she had been going like this and putting it in that way. So sometimes just a simple tip there like that, a lot cleaner and less strips. So that's helpful. And actually the last thing I have here, I've got to turn my computer a little bit so you can see, is the free arm here. So another, you know, one of the issues that some of our customers have is that they might not have full use of all of their limbs, or both of their arms, I should say. And they might still want to, you know, obviously feed themselves. And so this is kind of an innovative product made by a family that has a tube-fed child, where you clamp this in here, and it's clamped onto my table as well. I'll show you. So it's clamped onto the table, it's clamped up here, and you can, oops, let me do this. So if you're doing this pouring, this is in here, you can pour the food in and then bolus feed it that way with just one arm. Obviously you'd practice better than I would be doing. I'm trying to make sure you guys can see it. So another great option for, you know, whatever works for you. You know, we don't like to force anybody to do anything they don't want to do when it comes to tube feedings. That's why we're presenting all these different options. And so I've always equated this, you know, how you feed your tube feeding by kind of how you eat a piece of pizza. You know, some people eat a pizza by picking it up by the crust with their hands. Some use a fork and knife. And if you're in New York and it's thick thin crust, you fold it over in half. So whatever works for you and works for your family, I think is the key. And sometimes it's going to be different. Sometimes you might want to have it in like the Boley bag because you're out and about, and sometimes, I'm not in a rush, I'm just going to put it through the pump. It really depends on what works, and I don't think there's any particular wrong way. I think the biggest thing I like to encourage is find what works for you and try to get on that normal mealtime schedule if at all possible. So that's it for all of the different apparatuses that I have here. That's kind of my bag of tricks that I tend to carry around when I'm talking to dietitians and to other tube feeders, just to show them all the different ways. So do we have any questions? If you do, go ahead and type them in. I see quite a few people coming in and out here. Like I said, we will be doing another Facebook Live next week with Sharon from Boston Children's Hospital talking about her research studies. And she's part of that team that's been doing a lot of studies on blenderized diets, which is fantastic to have more research out. So any questions? I don't think we have anything quite yet. I'll leave it up here a minute or two longer. And if not, we can just end the video because I got through all of my different tools. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm talking to myself. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here. This will be available on our Facebook page and eventually on our YouTube page as well, because these questions tend to come up more and more, actually almost daily about, the syringes especially. So thanks for being here. Let us know if you need anything. You can always reach us at info@realfoodblends.com or on our Facebook page. Bye.